What's up, people? I'm not having any technical issues here. I just restarted the stream because the settings were wrong. And if I continued with those settings, it would have caused buffering and whatnot. So yeah, I restarted the stream. So I'm just gonna get myself situated. Give me 2 or 3 minutes and we will kick this thing off. Shout out to everybody locked in the live chat. I'll be with you very shortly. And if you can stick a like on this stream, it'll be much appreciated. Really helps with visibility. Be back in a couple of minutes. That's right. Somebody called it take 2. It's actually take 3. I started 3 streams. This is the 3rd stream I've started this evening. There was no issues with the internet. I just didn't have the correct settings, excuse me, on the first couple of attempts. And that would have caused buffering and whatnot. So yeah, just fixed the settings and started the stream again. So shout out to everybody in the live chat. I did see Matt Borgerson on the previous attempt at this live stream. Can't see him in the chat here. Shout out to Matt if he's about. Big up Rich Franklin, big up Sizzler, big up KO Talk, big up Hannibal Beats. ATL in the house. Big up JR, Star Fox, Truth Channel, Jeamie, Livingston, June Sports, Wagwan, yes, June Sports. Hold tight. How we feeling, people? Big up Same Hussein. What's up, people? What's happening? And before we get into, yeah, third time didn't work out for Ant in the Yard. Before we get into the boxing talk, we got a couple of fights taking place this weekend. I'll give you a little bit of uninteresting trivia. I'm in my mid-40s, and as a man, right, as men, we're a bit different to women as far as our attitude towards aging, because as men, we don't really trade on our looks as much as women do, right? So while a woman will start aging and getting wrinkly and saggy and all that kind of stuff and feel depressed, as a man, you start laughing at yourself. As you physically deteriorate, you actually find it a source of fun and and humor as you start laughing at yourself falling to pieces. I say all this to say that my favorite type of running is sprinting. I've always been a sprinter, not a long distance runner. So I still sprint even now. There's a road near me where I live, which is roughly 100 meters long, slight incline, and I go there most days to do some sprints, right? But bear in mind, as I say, in my mid-40s, I probably weigh 245 at this stage, maybe 250. And when you're sprinting and you're as big as I am and you've been sprinting for all these years, it's high impact, right? Over the past couple of days, I swear down, I damn near dislocated my leg. Have you ever heard of such a thing? Dislocating your leg? But yeah, my right leg, where the top of the leg fits into the hip, I've dislocated my arm before in boxing. That's why I know how it feels. I'm gonna guess that dislocating your leg is not as troublesome as dislocating your arm, because if you were to partially or fully dislocate your leg, your body weight is always pushing down on top of that socket, right? So gravity is actually helping you with that injury. Whereas when you dislocate your arm, gravity is pulling your arm down still. So I'm gonna guess it's not gonna heal as well as dislocated leg. Yeah, I do stretch. I do actually stretch. And I'm wondering whether the stretching that I did might have exacerbated it, because this was before the it's not a full dislocation, but it feels like my leg has got a bit looser in the socket and it's painful. And basically I was walking around as if one leg was longer than the other. You know, like that, like with a limp. I was walking around with a limp like I had a sawn off shotgun down my trousers, bro. And it's only started rectifying itself today. It still feels a bit sore, but yeah, literally, my legs were two different lengths. There you go. That's what happens when you're this age and you're still trying to do sprints and stuff like that. You can mash yourself up. Yeah, that's aging for you. That's what happens. Anyway, shout out to everybody in the live chat. Do I have a trench coat on? Nah, man. I don't want to get ran down on by the police. Trench coat plus a limp. It's a bad look. Yeah, YouTube is doing that thing with the names again, I think. Yeah, I think it is. Not sure what that's all about. But we proceed. All right, let's get into the boxing talk. I'd like to get your thoughts on this weekend's fights. We've got Ben Shalom's first show on the BBC, headlined by Frazer Clarke versus Jeamie Tshikeva. I still don't understand why he goes by the name Jeamie TKV, because Tshikeva is not a difficult surname to pronounce. So I don't know why they've used that. I mean, could you even call it an acronym? I guess TKV rather than Tshikeva. I'm not the greatest at pronouncing names, particularly Eastern European names. I butcher those. But Tshikeva, like I say, is not a difficult name to pronounce, so I'm not sure what the TKV thing's all about. Anyway, Frazer Clarke versus Jeamie Tshikeva. Ben Shalom's first show on the BBC. Headlined by this fight is for the British heavyweight title, which is currently vacant. I think this is an interesting matchup. I hope it don't turn out to be a stinker, but it might, given the styles and the relatively cautious nature of both boxers. Somehow, I'm more intrigued by this fight than I am by the other fight taking place this weekend, featuring a much bigger name in Ben Whittaker making his Matchroom debut against a guy called Benjamin Gavazi. Maybe it's because I'm more a fan of heavyweight boxing than any other weight class. Or maybe it's because I see this fight as being more genuinely competitive than Ben Whittaker versus Gavazi. And who knows, maybe Gavazi will surprise us in the way that Liam Cameron surprised us against Ben Whittaker. We'll see. But on paper, Clarke versus Tshikeva seems like a more competitive fight than Whittaker versus Gavazi. But what say you? We'll start off talking about Frazer Clarke versus Jeamie Tshikeva. Let's get a show of hands. Who are you guys picking in this fight and by what method? I'm going to guess that most of you, regardless of who you're picking to win, expect this fight to go the full distance. What are you guys saying? Show of hands. Clarke or Tshikeva? Who's going to win? Chase Greatness says Clarke on points. YS says, do you think TKV is trying to amp himself up? Yes, I do. Either that or he's been told, or maybe they've been told by boxer Ben Shalom that they need to start some fake beef in order to draw more viewers because it's boxer's first show on the BBC. They want it to be a success so that maybe BBC will invest a bit more money, give them more dates to put shows on. June Sports says, I honestly never heard of TKV. Well, these are pretty low-level, obscure British fighters. I mean, TKV was unknown even to most British fans prior to his fight with David Adeleye. JR says, I think TKV better and slicker boxer. Okay, Ocean Blue's going for Frazer Clarke. Sizzler's going for Frazer Clarke by TKO in 8 or 9 rounds. That's interesting. KO Talk says TKV on points in a hug fest. Same Hussein's going for Clarke, 10th round TKO. David Fisher's going Clarke. Points. Someone else going Clarke by KO. PMC says Frazer Clarke. Chase Greatness Clarke points. All right. Most people picking Clarke. YS says TKV by Screwface. Danny taking Clarke by 4th round KO. That's early. Do I think Frazer Clarke can win a world title? There's going to have to be a really great opportunity for him. As far as maybe a vacant belt against a really weak opponent. Otherwise, I don't think so. Having said that, it may have been Ade or G-Man or somebody else, I forget now, in a recent video who said that the first Fabio Wardley fight has aged really well for Frazer Clarke, hasn't it? It really has aged well. Given what Fabio Wardley has gone on to achieve, that first fight where Frazer Clarke got a draw has aged very, very well. Does that mean that he's maybe better than we were giving him credit for after he got demolished by Fabio in the rematch? We did get something of a measuring stick when he knocked out Ebenezer Tete in, what was it, 1 round? That very same version of Tete took Dillian Whyte 6 rounds. Dillian Whyte never came close to knocking him out. That fight was eventually stopped. I'm not really sure why, because Tete didn't appear to be in any serious danger. He was taking some shots, but anyway. Subsequently, we found out exactly how shot Dillian Whyte is. I thought he looked terrible in that fight against Ebenezer Tete. So we knew he was shot, but just how shot, like I say, we found out in the Italma fight. Hannibal Beat says, you know, I think promoters these days are really leaning towards making all the fighters sell the fights instead of themselves. That's a great comment. That's a great comment. Yeah, it's like they're trying to offload a lot of the promoters' work, the promoters' job, onto the fighters themselves. Yeah, that's a great comment. It's kind of like when you're in a job and the manager tries to offload loads of their own responsibilities onto other members of staff who aren't getting paid to do manager's work. Oh, for real? Jelly Mode says, I remember Tete being one of Dubois' earliest opponents. Tete is Larte's cousin, apparently. Is that right? You sure he's not his uncle? Or maybe even his dad? Sizzler says, if Clarke wins, which I think he will, debate would be good. Excuse me. Debate would be a good next opponent. Debate? I guess you mean Dubois. You mean Dubois? Who do you mean is the next opponent? What's up, KDV? Or KDVS? There you go. Hannibal says, Tete versus Ortiz for the senior citizen title. Oh, Adelai. Okay. Yeah, I think that's probably the way they'll go. I think the winner of Clarke TKV is going to be looking to fight David Adelai. Adelai is obviously promoted by Frank Warren, so it also depends on whether Frank Warren will play ball, because he's obviously got no love for Ben Shalom. So we'll see about that. But promoter politics aside, that would seem like the natural next fight. Oh, really? Erislandi Lara is apparently fighting this weekend too. Who's he fighting? I thought they'd done a deal for Lara to unify with Alimkhanuly, or is it Adames unifying with Alimkhanuly? So there is the page for this fight on BoxRec. Frazer Clarke versus Jeamie TKV. Frazer Clarke, 34 years of age. TKV, 2 years younger at 32. Clarke, 9-1-1. TKV, 8-2. Those 2 losses to the first one, some Brazilian guy, very random. And the second one to David Adelai in controversial circumstances. Fabio Wardley, the 1 loss, Frazer Clarke, the 1 loss to Fabio Wardley, and a split draw with Wardley the first time they met. Frazer Clarke, the bigger man, not just taller. Also, I suspect a longer reach and definitely heavier, maybe physically stronger. Jeamie TKV, the faster fighter, the more fluid fighter. Frazer Clarke is a bit stiff. Pause. Shout out to Supersized Fries. He says, Martin Bakoli is thicker than Butterbean. You know, speaking of Martin Bakoli, I saw an interview earlier on today with Ben Shalom. And apparently, Bakoli's trainer-manager, Billy Nelson, has had some critical words for Ben Shalom with regards to not getting Martin Bakoli a fight. And this is contradicting some insinuations that Billy Nelson had made a few weeks ago that Martin Bakoli had secured a big fight for January. But now apparently he's complaining that Ben Shalom's not doing a good job. And Ben Shalom basically put Billy Nelson and Martin Bakoli on blast. Did you guys see the interview? He revealed that they offered Martin Bakoli the Hrgovic fight and Martin Bakoli turned it down. And I think he might have said there was another fight that he offered Martin Bakoli and that was also turned down, or it was too soon or something like that. Hannibal says they probably don't want to pay Bakoli. But yeah, Bakoli's discipline is shockingly bad. Shout out to Striker down under. Big up Striker. How you doing, sir? Yeah, that's what I thought. Lara versus Alimkhanuly had been made. Is that this weekend? Surely not. Because if that's this weekend, that's crept up out of nowhere. I haven't heard anything about that. I'm assuming it's not that particular fight. Looking it up as we speak. Who's Erislandy Lara fighting? Oh, he is fighting Alimkhanuly. No, not this weekend. It's December 6th. And that's apparently going to be on Amazon Prime Video pay-per-view. What? Lara versus Alimkhanuly is pay-per-view? Come on, bro. Neither one of those guys has got an audience. How are you going to put that on pay-per-view? That's a PBC special. That's typical PBC. Put two guys who don't have any fans in against each other and charge a pay-per-view premium. Okay, it is a unification, so it's a high-quality bout, or relatively high-quality bout, because the middleweight division ain't exactly super strong right now. But pay-per-view isn't just about the competitiveness of a fight or the level it's at, world level or below. No, it's about the commercial value of the fight. How many people actually want to buy tickets? How many people want to tune in? That's what determines whether a fight should be pay-per-view or not. And for me, this is definitely not pay-per-view fair. I mean, back in the days, you don't even have to go that far back, 10, 15, 20 years. You got loads of world title fights not on pay-per-view. In fact, most world title fights in the 90s were not pay-per-view. No, pay-per-view was reserved for mega fights, super fights. The vast majority of world title fights were on regular cable, satellite, subscription services, and some of them on terrestrial television. Or network TV, as they call it in the United States. Certainly wasn't pay-per-view, and this is the kind of fight which back in the days would have just been either on network TV or cable or whatever. It would not have been behind a pay-per-view wall, but yeah. Erislandy Lara versus Janabek Alimkhanuly, December 6th at Frost Bank Center, San Antonio, Texas. That's going to be on Amazon Prime pay-per-view. Incredible. Incredible. Okay, I'm looking at the rest of the card. It's got Isaac Cruz versus Lamont Roach. That's a decent fight. Stephen Fulton versus Oshaki Foster. Okay, that's a decent scrap. Jesus Ramos Jr. versus Shane Mosley Jr. I shrugged my shoulders at that one, but even with the supporting cast for that particular show, it's still not pay-per-view fair. Team Batman Boxing says, I agree. It shouldn't be pay-per-view, but that's where PBC are at, yeah. They get so few TV dates now that it's almost like they're forced to do pay-per-view to make things work financially. Okay, sports fan says, thought you'd find this interesting. Janabek versus Lazizbek. Amateur fight. Red flags. Never seen a more despicable display from two gold medalists. Okay, I'll check it out. Sizzler says no advertising at all. Yeah, none. I don't think PBC can afford advertising at this stage. PMC says, going off subject, Fish Eyes did an interview with TalkSport and he didn't seem happy with Anthony Yarde. Paul Smith said he needs to leave his trainer. Seems Warren is giving up on him. I've never liked Frank Warren's attitude towards fighters because he's never been a fighter himself. I think for fans to critique Anthony Yarde's lack of aggression against David Benavidez is different to his promoter because his promoter is taking a cut of his money, you know? So the promoter acted like Yarde owes him something. To me, has always seemed a bit off. Yarde has made Frank Warren plenty of money over the years. You know? And Yarde tried, but I just don't think he had the confidence to really set about David Benavidez the way that he needed to. Yeah, for real, Evil Uncle Phil. Warren definitely has that I own you mindset. He does. Oh, wow. Hannibal says top rank cards are on Tubi now. That's random. Big up Jake. He says, yes, Hatman, have you also noticed that Warren and Hearn haven't been as buddy lately? No interviews together. Warren literally never mentions Turkey now. Did you clock this at all? Yeah, somebody else mentioned that. I'm not sure if it was you in the Element group or somebody else, but someone else in a recent stream or maybe in my Element chat group mentioned that. No, actually it was I think it was somebody, it was a boxer or a pundit who said it. God, who was it? Yeah, there was somebody in an interview, one of those boxing interview channels, that said that Warren wasn't at the Conor Ben Eubank Jr. fight, and he had loads of his fighters on the undercard, and they found that strange. And Eddie Hearn is now getting more gigs as lead promoter for Turkey Al Sheikh. So yeah, there could be a change in the guard behind the scenes where Eddie Hearn is maybe now in favor, in Turkey Al Sheikh's favor rather than Frank Warren. As I understand it, Johnny Nelson, thank you, Jake Jones. That's right, it was Johnny Nelson. It was Johnny Nelson, that's right. As I understand it, Turkey Al Sheikh is a very fiery character behind the scenes. Frank Warren is also a very fiery character. If you get two fiery characters like that, you can see how they could butt heads. Eddie Hearn is less fiery. I mean, don't get it twisted. He can hold his own, but by nature, he's not as fiery and contentious as Warren. He's more willing to, he's, you know, if you just look at the way Eddie Hearn, for example, has interacted with the public over the years and conducted his press events, he's always allowed people that are disrespectful towards him, YouTubers and whatnot with channels, to get into his press conferences and interview him. He's literally allowed people that are hostile to him to interview him. Frank Warren would never allow that at all. Right? But Eddie Hearn has always allowed it. So I say that to say that Eddie Hearn probably is more tolerant of being slagged off behind the scenes by whoever. Execs, the Saudis, or whoever. I suspect he's more tolerant of that kind of thing. Hannibal says, I feel like Oscar and Turkey had a falling out behind the scenes, probably over the Opetaya versus Zerdo negotiations. Yeah, probably. Oscar's a very Oscar's a very rebellious character. Shout out to Adam Folks for the super chat. He says, if you had to pick one, would you rather boxing go back to one belt or the original 8 weight, I guess you meant to say weight divisions? Okay, that's a good question. I would personally rather boxing go back to one belt per division rather than the 8 weight classes. Yeah. I'd rather one belt per division than 8 weight classes. But how about you, Adam? The reason I say that is because I do think 8 weight divisions is too few. One of the reasons that they had so few weight divisions back in the days is because there weren't as many boxers. Do you know what I mean? So you couldn't really flesh out any more than 8 weight classes. But as more and more people started participating in boxing, you can then have more weight classes because there's people to participate in them. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, I would rather go back to one belt per division rather than 8 weight classes. Shout out to Adam Folks. Big up GMS Nightmare. He says, Toney versus Benavidez, Riakpo versus Adelaide, Johnny Nelson versus Bakoli. You're trolling us with Johnny Nelson versus Bakoli. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. Big up GMS. Okay, Toney versus Benavidez is a very interesting fight. Again, I'm going to sit on the fence a little bit here, but I think it's justified. I'm saying Toney wins at super middleweight, but Benavidez wins at light heavyweight or above. Yeah, Toney at super middle, but Benavidez at light heavy or above. And I say that because Toney's best years were at super middle. Well, middle and super middle were his best years. That's when he was at his sharpest and whatnot. That was the best version of James Toney that we've ever seen, in my opinion. And Benavidez and some of Toney's worst years were at 175. Whereas Benavidez, I suspect, is going to have some of his best years at 175. And by the way, Benavidez says that he intends to move back down to 175 after the Gilberto Ramirez fight. Yeah, that's what he says. He was asked about a potential fight with Opetaya, and as you would expect, he was non-committal. Nobody wants that smoke. So, okay, yeah, I would go with Toney over Benavidez at 168, but Benavidez over Toney at 175. I think both fights are very competitive. Riakpo versus Adelaide. I'm going to go Adelaide. Johnny Nelson versus Bakoli. I'm going to go Lawrence Bakoli. How about you, GMS? Mark says, I disagree, Hatman. Eddie used to allow criticism. But when was the last time you heard a YouTuber ask him any really difficult questions like clarity on failed drug tests? Yeah, perhaps Eddie Hearn is not as accessible as he used to be. But certainly, when he entered the US market for the first time, he was letting all those PBC fanboy channels who slagged him off all day and called him the devil incarnate. He was allowing them into his press conferences and he was allowing them to interview him, even though he knew they were all totally hostile. You remember when one of them got sprayed with water by Eddie Hearn's security? And he was doing that for years, Eddie Hearn. He was letting anyone interview him, even if there were people that slagged him off all day. So yeah, maybe he's a little less accessible now, but he still has it in him. It's the point I'm making. He still has it in him to put up with being slagged off. He doesn't get as offended by it as Frank Warren. Because Eddie Hearn thinks it's a necessary evil. That's why I have to imagine. Not like he likes being slagged off, but he's willing to get slagged off in order to secure the bag. He's willing to tolerate certain things for money. Shout out to Jake Jones. He says, Hatman, I know you like to predict fights from all views and angles and consider different outcomes, but could you make a case for Jake Paul at all? I'll come back onto that. Big up Funny Faces for the super chat. He says, have you been to Ghana? Thoughts on it? No, I haven't been to Ghana. And I've got no real desire to go to Ghana, to be honest. Ghana is very expensive compared to many other places in Africa. Ghana has been somewhat of a tourist hub, particularly in West Africa. It might be the biggest tourist hub in West Africa. Expensive, oversaturated with tourists and stuff. And also the locals in Ghana are getting, as I understand it from people that live there, increasingly bitter towards foreigners because so many of them are going there now. So it's not a place that I've got any plans to visit. Sometimes when a place gets oversaturated with foreigners, even if they're of African descent, because there are loads of people of African descent moving to Ghana and have been over, many years, things can start to feel a little too familiar. Do you know what I mean? I didn't leave the West in order to go somewhere where I'm going to find a bunch of people from London and the UK. I didn't leave the West for that. That's why I was never a fan of going on holiday to places like Ayia Napa. Ayia Napa back in the days was just full of people from London. I was like, why the hell would I pay money to go on a holiday and see a bunch of people who are from the very place that I just left? I don't want to do that. I want to get away from all that. Not that Ghana is that extreme in that regard, but yeah. Long story short, I don't have any burning desire to go to Ghana. I'm happy where I am right now, to be honest. But with regards to making a case for Jake Paul, a big up Funny Faces. With regards to making a case for Jake Paul, if he can frustrate Anthony Joshua, if Anthony Joshua can, but by running around the ring and whatnot and being elusive, and if Anthony Joshua feels anxious to get the fight over and done with, because even his fans, people like Adeola Depot, for example, think that AJ is supposed to go in there and knock Jake Paul out in a round. If AJ starts feeling the weight of those expectations and Paul can play on it, get AJ to start reaching in and whatnot, land a big shot, wobble him, cut him, do something like that. You never know, as I said earlier on, especially with the weight stipulation. People are acting as though AJ having to make 245 is no big deal. Since when? He's never had to make weight before in his entire life. Yeah, he was 245 against Usyk in the rematch. Folks, that was like 3 years ago. 3 or 4 years ago. You do realize that as you age, it gets more difficult to shed weight to get your body weight down. And this is a guy that's never made weight before in his entire life. And he's got a relatively short camp. So you add all those ingredients up, I might have to push Jake Paul's chances of winning to 10%. Originally I had him at 5%. I might push his chance of winning up to 10%. So it's possible that Jake Paul could win, but I still think improbable. I think what's a lot more possible is that Jake Paul loses, but Anthony Joshua looks bad. I think that's a lot more possible or probable than Jake Paul actually winning. Shout out to D-Man for the super chat. He says, I had to think. I actually think fighting Jake Paul is a very good move for Anthony Joshua. This is the first time a lot of casual Americans have heard of him. It will ironically boost his stock. It could do, as long as AJ handles Jake Paul with ease. If he handles Jake Paul with ease and knocks him out in spectacular fashion, yes, bizarrely, it'll do wonders for his profile and his credibility in the United States. Not because Americans rate Jake Paul really highly, they don't. It's just that they think Anthony Joshua is absolute garbage. They think he's so garbage that Jake Paul's got a very good chance of beating him. So it's a weird one. But yeah, stateside, a devastating AJ victory bizarrely would actually boost his credibility over there. Not in the UK. No one's going to rate what AJ, if AJ knocks out Jake Paul, no one in the UK is going to rate that apart from super duper Anthony Joshua fanboys and casuals. But the vast majority of the boxing community are just going to look at it and shake their heads. Big up D-Man for the super chat. Shout out to Baz. He says, Hatman, I heard this trainer, Igor, head trainer Igor, AJ referred to, could be Usyk himself, as that was his character name in the Smashing Machine movie. Possible, question mark? You know what? I heard someone, I watch Ade and G-Man on a regular basis. I watch Richard Dwyer, and then I watch the boxing interview channels. I also watch Boxing on the Edge, my guy Henry. Those are the channels I watch. Like I say, I watch all the boxing interview channels. And someone over the past week or so has actually said that as well, that Igor could actually beat Alexander Usyk. And what a coup that would be for Anthony Joshua if he turned up in the Partridge fight. See, it would kind of be shooting the, it would kind of be jumping the gun, excuse me, for AJ to have Usyk in his corner for the Jake Paul fight. It would be far more of a shock and a coup for AJ to turn up on fight night against Luke Partridge and Usyk's in his corner. That'd be crazy. Especially if they kept it under wraps and made out as though someone else in Usyk's team was training him. You know, whenever they let cameras in, they had someone else training him. But then fight night comes, AJ walks to the ring, and Usyk is in his corner. That'd be the ultimate mind games. Think of the level of mind games that would be if AJ turned up to fight Partridge with Usyk in his corner as his actual trainer. Madness. Shout out to Baz for the super chat. Big up Baz every time. Afro Jam says Gambia is super touristy too. Yeah, especially middle-aged Western women. They talk about sex tourism and point the finger at men, and I guess most of the time it is men. But in places like Gambia, it seems like most of the sex tourists are middle-aged Western women. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. Weird stuff. Big up D-Man for the super chat. He says, I was surprised he fired Ben Davison so quick. What do you think? He apparently blamed him for the Dubois loss. I think AJ doesn't have enough faith in his own judgment in the ring and relies too heavily on instructions from trainers. I don't think Ben Davison is necessarily used to a fighter who has such little discernment, especially a fighter of AJ's experience. You're supposed to have more discernment than that by that stage of your career. Knowing when it's okay to have your left hand down, knowing when it's okay to do certain moves. So it's like AJ's fired Davison because he hasn't given him the right pinpoint instructions that can guide him through every second of every round. Like, nah, bro, you're going to have to be able to figure things out for yourself to some extent. You can't rely completely on the trainer. Do you know what I mean? So maybe he does blame Ben Davison. Maybe he's looking for someone else to give him step-by-step instructions and hold his hand through every second of every round. But that's weird. It's weird, bro. AJ's a weird guy. The only issue I ever had with Ben Davison training AJ was a potential conflict of interest regarding a Partridge fight. because Ben Davison was part of that Partridge cult. And I suspect he's still secretly in love with Luke Partridge. Baz Newton says, it's strange, I thought Ben's analysis and scenario type training would have worked for him. I think it was working for him to a certain extent, but AJ has such an incredible lack of faith in his own judgment that, as I said, he wants somebody to tell him what to do through every second of a fight, which is just absurd. Even somebody as analytical and precise and scenario-based as Ben Davison can't do that. You know, he's been used to working with people like Billy Joe Saunders and Luke Partridge, who do trust their own judgment in the ring. The trainer is there as a second pair of eyes. You know, all the serious work and the most important work with a trainer is done in the gym, as far as game plans and technique and conditioning and all that type of stuff. Once you're in the ring, the fighter is supposed to be figuring most of the stuff out for himself. The trainer's there as a second pair of eyes, maybe, you know, advising him about the game plan and all that kind of thing. AJ's such a weird guy. I saw an interview the other day where someone said before one of AJ's fights, he came into the dressing room with another fighter and he was asking the fighter's trainer how he thinks he should approach his fight. So it's not just Clifton Mitchell who he's done that with before the first Usyk match. He's apparently done it, and Spencer Oliver said he's done it for years. Where right before he's about to go out and fight, he's asking other people for advice about how he should go about it. Honestly, that is one of the strangest things I've ever heard in my life. Why does this guy have such little faith in his own judgment? So weird. Big up D-Man for the super chat. 175 concurrent viewers, only 33 likes. Did I offend someone? I'm sorry if I did. If we can get these likes up, people, it'd be much appreciated. You can get the likes up to, like, I don't know, 80 or something. GMS Nightmare says, yeah, he has imposter syndrome. Dominica says AJ is AI. Atavistic Intellect says, Hatman, Razor Ruddock versus Dylan White, who you got? I got Razor Ruddock. Similar fighters actually, but Razor Ruddock a lot more athletic. And I want to say a better chin, better powers of recovery. Yeah, Dylan White was right about AJ. He's a weirdo. Simple as that. He's a weird guy. Talking about Big Meech and all that, you know, Larry Hoover, Big Meech. What on earth? Anthony Joshua grew up in Watford. What the hell does he know about Larry Hoover and Big Meech? Talk about worlds apart. Vengeance says, no way Clarke is 6'6". Oh yeah, he's 6'6". 6'5" at the shortest. He's tall. Very tall. And in fact, let's move on from this fight on the weekend. Most people are picking Frazer Clarke, as am I. I haven't looked at the undercard, actually, for Clarke versus Tshikeva. I think it's pretty trash, from what I've heard. Ben Whittaker versus Benjamin Gavazi, this obscure German, on his Matchroom debut. Any of you guys want to chime in on this fight and chime in on Ben Whittaker in general? Vengeance says more like 6'4" or 6'5". He's definitely taller than 6'4". I've seen Frazer Clarke in person. He's definitely taller than 6'4". He's very big. Very big. Pause. Big up Ali with a super chat. He says, Hatman, Lee Wood versus Josh Warrington is official for February. Okay. They're finally getting it on. They've been talking about it for the longest time. They're finally doing it. What has either man got left at this stage? Big up Charles B in the chat. The way Lee Wood was destroyed by Kakachi, he took a real beating. I'm leaning towards Warrington. Obviously, he lost before, but yeah, I'm leaning towards Warrington as well. Mario says, Ben Whittaker took the way out against Liam Cameron in their first fight. Ben was gassing in the mid-rounds and pulled Liam out of the ring. Don't think he makes it as world-class but regional champ. I think that's a fair comment, considering what we've seen so far. I still think Ben Whittaker's got it all to prove. Yeah, he beat Liam Cameron in the rematch, but that's because he made his talent an impossible object for Liam Cameron in the rematch. Liam Cameron never was able to test him again. Whittaker was just sharper. He was hitting harder in the rematch, and yeah, Cameron just couldn't get to him to ask him those same questions again. Big up Ali for the super chat. He says, this fight's supposed to happen, rematch each other. So I guess you're a fan of the fight, Ali, right? Who do you think's going to win? I'm leaning towards Warrington. And I'm doing that because I'm guessing he's maybe a bit fresher. Because like I say, it was a bad beating that Wood took against Kakachi. Hannibal says, do you notice that Eddie never mentions Ben against Benavidez or Ben versus Boots or Ortiz? Benavidez? Which Benavidez are you referring to? Surely not David Benavidez. That'll be up at 175. Ben's nowhere near big enough to go up there. Which other Benavidez? Or do you mean Ortiz? Oh no, you've said Ortiz there. Boots or Ortiz. Yeah, he doesn't mention Ben against any of those guys. And I've said this, I pointed this out over the past few days. Eddie Hearn and Conor Benn were dismissive of fighting Devin Haney. So if you're talking your way out of a fight with Devin Haney, then there's no way you're going to go near Boots or Virgil Ortiz. Because I did see one of Ade's videos, and he was like defending Conor Benn to some extent, saying Ben's supposed to be calling out Haney. Maybe he didn't realize that Ben didn't call out Haney. He was trash talking Haney. But then when the prospect of fighting Haney came up, he was like, oh, I'm not going to fight somebody like that. Nobody wants to see me versus Haney. That's what Ben was actually doing. I'm all for fighters trash talking their contemporaries, their rivals. I'm all for that. As long as they're willing to step in the ring and fight them. But Conor Benn and Eddie Hearn were basically talking their way out of a Devin Haney fight. Very, very off. Shout out to D-Man for the super chat. He says, would you love to see Jai fight at heavyweight? I don't want to say I would love to see Jai fight at heavyweight, but I'd be interested to see Jai fight at heavyweight. I don't think he can do as well at heavyweight, anywhere near as well, to be honest, as Usyk. He's not as technically good. I don't think he's as physically strong. I'm more disappointed for Jai Opetaia that the other cruiserweight champions have been ducking him for all this time. I'm disappointed for him. So I'd be interested to see Jai at heavyweight. But I'd really be happy. What I'd love to see is him get an opportunity to unify at cruiserweight. Put it this way, I think Jai's best years are going to be at cruiserweight. I mean, I think his best weight class, the weight class at which he'll be most effective, is cruiserweight. I don't think he'll be as good at heavyweight. Maybe he'll prove me wrong, but that's my perception right now. Indeed, Evil Uncle Phil. Ben ducking Crocker because of the rehydration clause is wild. He just made Chris Eubank Jr. adhere to a rehydration clause twice, and he's not willing to do the same thing. Wild. Yeah, I agree with that music playlist. He says, I get the feeling Jai isn't as durable as Usyk either. Usyk's chin is one of his underrated strengths. Yeah, Usyk has got a great chin. He's got a great defense too, so he doesn't get hit clean on that chin that often. But when he has been hit clean, he's been able to take it. He hasn't been noticeably wobbled to the same extent that Jai Opetaia has. In that Naika fight, Opetaia was clearly wobbled. That's the most clearly I've ever seen him wobbled in a fight. Shout out to Waved. Yeah, I saw TKV and Clarke on TalkSport, but I don't know. Am I being cynical, or did it seem a little contrived, that beef? D-Man says, I think Naika will come back. He's a decently talented fighter. Nobody has talked about Ben Whittaker versus this Gavazi character. That's a measure of how little interest there is in this fight among my audience. No one is rating this matchup. And how could they, given the obscure nature of Benjamin Gavazi? Nobody knows him. Poet says, why is Whittaker so emotional? Good question. Maybe that's just the way he's wired, but it is a concern. Because he seemed to have some type of like PTSD following that first Liam Cameron fight. And the fight weren't even that rough. How weird was that? It was a pretty mundane fight. It wasn't the thriller in Manila. He hadn't been knocked down a bunch of times and had to hold on for dear life. No. It was a pretty mundane fight where he was maybe gassing a little bit and then whatever happened, happened. But he was so traumatized by that he attacked a fan at the airport. He went missing off social media, and this is a social media guy. He went missing off social media for months. And when he popped back up, he was talking about Jesus. No disrespect, and I've got no issue with anyone who's Christian and, you know, they do the whole Jesus thing. But all I'm saying is it was a very dramatic reaction from Ben Whittaker over that Liam Cameron fight. Like, very neurotic. It's not that deep, bro. Big up D-Man, he says, I think Ben wears hair bonnets. Gotta hope he's not bonnet gang too. If he is, he needs to take heed of what happened to Anthony Yarde. You can't be coming with bonnet energy to the ring. That way lies damnation. Ali says Ben Whittaker is into anime. Very infantile man. Hannibal says it wasn't the fight that got to Ben Whittaker, it was the backlash. Well, it might have been both, because think about it. He wasn't taking some terrible beating in that first Liam Cameron fight. But in the opinion of many people, he quit. Why would you quit in a fight? You haven't even been knocked down. He wasn't taking loads of big headshots and no. But that's all it took for him to want to quit. And pull a stunt where he's like, oh, my neck and my back. Yo, I don't know whether this boy's built for the game. Ocean Blue says they can listen to slow jams together if that's the case. Yeah, if Ben Whittaker's also a bonnet man, he and Anthony Yarde can listen to those slow jams together. So, I want to say something which is a little, how can I frame this? There are certain light-skinned guys, mixed race guys and light-skinned black guys, who almost by default fall into this archetype of a pretty boy. Yarde and Ben Whittaker being examples of it. And one of the hallmarks of these pretty boys is when they have these extravagant hairstyles. Anthony Yarde had some fashion locks thing going on. He don't look like a fighter. He's wearing bonnets and all this type of business, right? Look like some kind of model. And Ben Whittaker, same type of deal with his hairstyle. Whereas the tough light-skinned guys like Fabio Wardley, you're just rocking a ball head. You know what I mean? You ain't seeing Fabio Wardley coming with no type of elaborate hairstyle. Just rocking a straight ball head. He's letting you know from jump. Ain't nothing sweet round here. Ain't nothing sweet round here. Ali says, getting wheeled out of the ring is humiliating, to be fair. Ocean Blue says he had enough mobility after the Cameron fight to throw that punch backstage. Yeah, that's right. And then attack the fan in the airport. Poet says, I think the hairstyle infatuation is linked to emotional expression. Of course it's expression, but what I'm saying is it's the wrong kind of energy. You know? Having them pretty boy hairstyles, what does that say about the kind of mindset of those fighters? Do you see what I'm saying? They're concerned with their physical appearance so much, concerned with looking pretty, and nah, bro, this is the hurt business. Shout out to Ali for the super chat. Big up, big up. He says, the real stuff, which I wanted to talk about, is White has been offered to fight Bakoli in Lagos, Nigeria on December 19th. Makes sense for White to take this fight. Bakoli is ranked #1 with the WBC. He's definitely not winning this. Is that right? Okay, where did you hear that from, Ali? That's interesting information. Will Dillian Whyte take it? Is he willing to get chinned again? Right after he's been chinned by Itama against a bitter rival this time. Because Itama was never a bitter rival of Dillian Whyte. So he was willing to go in there and, take his licks. But Bakoli is a guy that he's had beef with for years. And I'm sure Dillian Whyte in his head knows there's a very high chance he gets knocked out by Bakoli. Does he want to have that happen to him against somebody he literally hates? Is he willing to sell himself, for a paycheck to that extent? That's interesting, Ali, if that's correct. Where did you hear that information from? Anyone else heard about this? Dillian Whyte apparently being offered to fight Bakoli in Lagos, Nigeria, December 19th. I'm sure that's a fight that Bakoli requested himself. Afro Jam says, Delicious Ori with them hairstyles would have been legendary. Yeah, Delicious Ori, another guy not built for this game. Do you know what I mean? He needs to go be a male model or something, bro. He ain't built for this game. Hannibal says, Hatman as a child, I absolutely hated being light-skinned. I always felt I wasn't black enough. Well, to be fair, black people probably made you feel that way, But what I'm trying to say is, when it comes to light-skinned guys or, mixed-race guys who are fighters, I don't want to see him coming with pretty boy haircuts. Do you know what I mean? Pretty boy hairstyles. I want to see him coming in like Fabio Wardley. Yeah? No frills. He's not trying to lean into no pretty boy archetype. I feel reassured when I see a light-skinned guy with a bald head stepping into a ring. You know what I mean? To be fair, yes, David Haye was on that pretty boy lighty flex, but he broke the mold, didn't he, David Haye? Because David Haye was tough. I'll give you that one. David Haye leaned into that pretty boy lighty thing, but he was actually tough. Yeah. Haye was actually tough. He was tough. Someone said Tank Davis. Yeah, but Tank Davis is a midget, so he's automatically got Napoleon syndrome. So, Tank Davis can't do pretty boy light skin thing because he's a midget and he looks like a Cabbage Patch Kid. So, he's always getting, he always had to fight for his. But he's still zesty as hell, Tank. I don't know what's up with Tank, man. And zesty as hell. Big up Ali for the super chat. He says it's a #1 WBC fight. It's a grudge match. He has to take it. This is real information. Believe me, Hatman. I'm just asking where you got the information from. I'm intrigued. I'm interested. Can you reveal your source? I'd actually be surprised if Dillian Whyte takes it for the reasons I've already laid out. I'd be surprised if he takes it because he hates Bakoli that much and he knows Bakoli could chin him. Unless it's like crazy money. Somebody says Lyndon Arthur's another rare one. Okay, yeah, but Lyndon Arthur has kind of like a grizzled face. So I don't think he could pull off the the pretty boy flex anyway. He's got like a grizzled face, like a bulldog or something. Poet says Tank has more lemons in his shopping bag than Diddy had baby oil in his mansion. Lyndon Arthur's got a face like a man who's been bunning weed for 35 years every day. He's got that kind of just jaded roadman face. It's all twists up and wrinkled and stuff, do you know what I mean? All right, random comment here. Someone says, Johnny Fisher's mullet was funny. Afro Jam says, Tank enjoyed being in Diddy's arms. Scandalous behavior. Yeah, Tank is... What more can we say about Tank at this stage? I mean... Zesty midget. Hussein says, what about Paulie Malignaggi's dreadlocks? Yeah, they were pretty weird. We got Ali for the super chat. He says, Amir Khan is promoting the show on December 19th in Nigeria. Found out from him. Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. Found out from Amir Khan. I knew Khan was involved in putting those shows on in Africa. All right. You found out from Khan. So you know Amir Khan? And Khan made the offer to Dillian Whyte. Khan making moves behind the scenes. That's very interesting. So let me ask you this, Ali. Do you think Dillian Whyte's going to take it? I know you think he should take it, but do you think he will take it? Personally, I don't think he will. Unless it's crazy money. And can they really come up with crazy money for a fight in Nigeria? I'm not so sure. Yeah, I remember when Roy Jones had that line of hair at the back of his neck. I remember that. Lennox Lewis also used to have a little tuft of hair at the back of his neck. I don't know what that was all about, but he had like one little tuft at the back of his neck. The rest of the back of his head was shaved. He just had a little tuft, as if he was thinking about starting a rat tail or something, but never did. Afro Jam says, Hatman, do any Zambians know about Derek Chisora? Have you looked into the boxing scene out there? The boxing scene here is, well, pretty much non-existent. I've not yet been to a boxing gym. There are a couple of gyms in Lusaka. So I will eventually go there, talk to some people and see what they know. But to show you how non-existent the boxing scene is here in Zambia, all the people I've spoken to about boxing have said that, oh yeah, I know a boxer, and it's some Zambian woman who used to box like 5 years ago. That's all they know. A Zambian woman who used to box 5 years ago or something. That's the only thing they know about boxing. Sane says, Hatman, what style did you rock as a youngster and why did you start shaving bald? Because I don't like fuss. As far as when I was a youngster, in the 80s, at one point, I had an afro. But, you know, just regular, low cut, relatively low, mini fro, going into a full-on afro in the 80s. In the 90s, I had a high top for a bit. I want to say early 90s, high top. That was all the fashion back then. You know, you had the rappers like Big Daddy Kane and all these people were high tops. I had a high top. And then I had twists, you know, where I was looking to grow locks. The locks never did really grow that long. But after that, and that was when I was about 13, 14, I just decided to shave my head and kept it that way ever since I was about 14. Big up AJ. He says, think Hay legit went broke. His hair was a mess for a while. As soon as he landed the Bellew fight, he got those tight braids back in. Xavier says, why do you think UK boxing is so much bigger than in other European countries like France, Italy, Spain? Because of the heritage. Because Britain is the home of the modern version of professional boxing, Queensberry rules. It's the place where it originated. So I think that's why it's always maintained that strong tradition, that boxing culture, that boxing spirit, you know? Big up Ali for the super chat. He says, I promise you, the offer was made by Amir Khan Promotions for Bakoli to fight White. It's legit, and in my view, White will take it because Lawrence is ranked WBC #1. Okay. We shall see. We'll see how much Dylan White wants a payday. If it's even a decent payday. I mean, do you know how much the offer was for, Ali? Do you know any idea of a ballpark figure of what they were offering Dylan White for the fight? Okay, AJ says the White news is coming from TalkSport. And Circle says White might as well. What else is he going to do? I think he should retire. To be honest, he's made plenty of money. Why continue to embarrass himself? Just knock it on the head. Like, give it a rest. I think Dylan White should retire. My favorite fighter, past or present, I don't think you ever mentioned. Oh, I've mentioned my favorite fighters many times. I don't have one single favorite fighter, but I've got several favorite fighters. You know, a bunch of them. So people are often surprised when I say Mike Tyson's one of my favorite fighters. But I'm objective about Mike Tyson. I'm not a Mike Tyson fanboy. Yeah? I thoroughly enjoyed watching him fight. So explosive and dynamic as a pressure fighter. He really only had one dull outing, and that was the Bone Crusher Smith fight. Every other Mike Tyson fight was compelling viewing, even if it only lasted 30 seconds. So Mike Tyson's always been one of my favorite fighters. Roy Jones Jr., another one of my favorite fighters. Corey Sanders, on a random one, was always one of my favorite fighters. I just love this style, the hand speed, the southpaw left. Tommy Hearns was always one of my favorite fighters. The left hook to the body, the big straight right hand. These days, Usyk is probably my favorite fighter in boxing. Not just because of his attitude, right? Having the kind of attitude you want all champions to have, but also because slyly, he's a bit of a bad man in the ring. I mean, he's mashing people up. He's knocking Daniel Dubois out and stuff like that. So, you know, he's punching Partridge all around the ring. So these days, Usyk's probably my favorite fighter. But yeah, in yesteryear and of all time, Roy Jones, Corey Sanders, Tommy Hearns, Mike Tyson. Big up Ali for the super chat. He says, I will have to reread to post to find out more information, but I will tell you as much as I know. It just depends if White takes the offer. Okay. Keep me posted. I'd like to know how much they're offering him. Because everybody has a price. Do you know what I mean? Everyone has a price, like the Ted DiBiase theme tune in WWE or F back in the days. Everybody has their price. What price? What is Dylan White's price for agreeing to get knocked out by Lawrence Okolie? What's his price? Big up Ali for the super chat. He says, I got real love for you, Hatman. Big up Ali. Much appreciated for the super chats, my bro. Someone says White is being offered $2 million. That can't be right. $2 million? For a fight in Nigeria? Who's putting that money up? And it's like how I always said about fights in Africa, right? Yeah, someone says 2 million naira. Yeah, 2 million naira, I can believe. Yeah, 2 million naira. So, yeah, I always said about Africa that big shows are never going to happen there until they start cutting in the local African promoters. Because previously it's like these Western promoters tried to go to Africa and just put shows on, you know, talk to the government and say, yeah, we want to put a show on. Nah, bro, it don't work like that in Africa. Everybody wants to have their palms greased. Yeah? And the only way you're not going to get fleeced out of any money that you could possibly make for the show is if you partner up with an African promoter on the ground that has some clout, that has some weight in the local scene. He's going to want paying a good amount. He's going to want paying a lot. But that's the only way you're going to be putting on a big show in most African countries. You got to go through a local promoter who's going to want a large cut for facilitating everything. He's probably not going to do much by way of the logistics for the show. But just for facilitating and smoothing everything over with the local government, police, and all the other, security and all the other people that want their palms greased. That's the way it's done. That's what it's like in Africa, bro. Shout out to Ali. He says, let me find out, then we'll come back if I can get any information on how much he was offered. Big up, Ali. I look forward to hearing if you can find out that information, my brother. Be very interested. Has there been a big fight in Africa since Lewis Rackman? I don't think so. I think that was the last one. Talking about what, 20 odd years ago? Okay, AJ says, Amir Khan's offer to stage a grudge match between Dillian Whyte and Lawrence Okolie was embarrassing, according to the Body Snatchers manager, Michael Offo. Well, that Michael Offo guy is actually a low-key troll. He's hilarious, by the way. I'm not dissing the guy. He's actually really funny. The way he trolls people at press conferences and whatnot. So, I would take his comments about it being a laughable offer with a grain of salt. I mean, it might be true that it was a laughable offer, but not necessarily. If Dillian Whyte just doesn't want to get knocked out by Lawrence Okolie, then he's gonna come up with some excuse, right? But yeah, Michael Offo is hilarious. He is hilarious. In fact, the exchanges between Michael Offo and Lawrence Okolie might be even more entertaining than the exchanges between Dillian Whyte and Lawrence Okolie. Yeah, Okolie's hilarious too. That's what I'm saying. And both of them are deadpan. Michael Offo is deadpan, and so is Okolie. So you could have like a deadpan face-off type scenario between Lawrence Okolie and Michael Offo. Both of them trying to bust their deadpan bants. What does deadpan mean? Deadpan means when you're being funny with a straight face. When you're acting like you're being serious, but you're saying like funny things with a serious demeanor, that's deadpan. Shout out to Ali for the super chat. He says, Hatman got legit information that the offer is legit. But tell me how I can share or post the link. Please tell me so everyone can believe me. Just tell us where to go, bro. I'm not sure if YouTube are blocking links in the live chat or what settings I need to change. But just tell us if there is a post, which website it is or whose Twitter account it is. And I'm sure people can go and have a look. I'm not doubting you, my bro. I'm just interested to find out how much the money is. According to others, Michael Offo, the manager of Dillian Whyte, is saying the offer was laughable, derisory. PMC says, would you go and watch the Whyte Okolie fight live, Hatman, with you being in Africa? No. Africa is a ginormous continent. It's much bigger than Europe. Flying from where I am to Ghana is a long trip. Or is it? No, it's in Nigeria, excuse me. Flying from where I am to Nigeria is a very long trip. And no, I would have no, probably no intention of doing that. If it was in South Africa, I'd probably do it. If a fight was in South Africa, I might actually try and attend it. In Circle says a 14-hour flight to see White get chinned is a bit steep. Yeah, when you're doing internal flights within Africa, you're often on rickety planes and it can be very sketchy. Depending on the country. I mean, Nigeria, there might be major airlines that fly from Zambia to Nigeria. I'm not sure. But for example, if you're flying from South Africa into Zimbabwe, you're going to get on some rickety little plane. Rickety little plane that'll have you, you know, praying the entire journey. If you go into somewhere major like Ethiopia, then yeah, all the major airlines go to Ethiopia. AJ says, do you mostly eat out, Hatman, or do you chef it up? I've got girlfriends who cook for me. But when my girlfriends ain't cooking for me, I occasionally throw some steaks on the barbecue, or I eat out. Big up Ali, he says, I'll write it down in normal chat. Super chat is playing up now. Make sure to read it. And hopefully it shows up in normal chat and we don't have the issue that there was the other day when, for some bizarre reason, your comment wasn't coming through in normal chat. That was so strange. But big up Ali. If you've got the figure that Dylan White has been offered, I'll be very interested to hear it. Big up Ali every time. That's my guy. Someone says that's Tete's football age. Okay, Ali says Instagram. All right. Would you care to share which Instagram page it is? Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, Tete is coming with some African footballers' age. Yeah, there's no way that guy is under 40. Ridiculous. I'm telling you, bro. Not just his face, even his body is like an old man's body. His movements are like an old man's movements. There's no way he's under 40. Give it a rest. That guy's 50, maybe more. In fact, big up G-Man. He pointed out the other day that Firat Arslan, is a Turkish cruiserweight, is still fighting now. And he's like 55. Can you imagine? He was old as dirt when he got robbed against Marco Huck back in the days. I think he was in his 40s even then. Now man's 55 and he's still an active cruiserweight. Can you imagine? Evil Uncle Phil says at a minimum he's 45. And even if he's 45, he looks hella old for 45, bro. It was Chris. If he's my age, bro, he's aged far worse than I have. I'll tell you that. 45, bro. He looks ancient for 45. It reminds me of that guy who went on Drewski's show. You know, the African guy? And Drewski started rinsing him, talking about... Because the guy said he was 27. And Drewski was like, 27? I'm not even going to repeat what Drewski said for the sake of the algorithm. But yeah, he was going in on this African guy. Claiming he was 27, man looked 47. I think Drewski even said, 27 what, in African years? 27? Anyone know the clip I'm referring to? That was wild. That's where Drewski hurt that guy's feelings. Yeah, Huey Fury looks very old. So does his cousin Luke Partridge. The Furies all look older than their age. Is that because of an unhealthy lifestyle? Is it genetics? Or are some of those traveler fighters also older than their official age? Some of these guys don't have birth... Well, in the older generation of travelers, a lot of them didn't have birth certificates. They didn't have national insurance numbers. Nothing like that with the older generation. But with Luke Partridge, as I understand it, he was born in a hospital. So he should have a birth certificate and all that type of stuff. But the older generation of travelers, a lot of them didn't have birth certificates or any of that business, so they could just make up an age. You know what I mean? Yeah, Huey Partridge. If AJ and Fury fought, who have I got? So you think AJ KOs him? I got Partridge, personally. I got Partridge. I wouldn't count AJ out completely, but I got Partridge because he's a better big occasion performer. Yeah, I saw John Partridge's response to Joe Egan. And he's kind of winded his neck in, isn't he? To use an old northern expression. Johnny Partridge is winding his neck in. Apologizing for his antics. Who'd have thought it? And Circle says, I assume he's just bottling it as always. Yeah, probably. Sam O'Donoghue says, that's true. My cousins and uncles always lied about their age. There you go. My dad doesn't know his age. Yeah. My dad does not know his actual age, doesn't know his birth date, didn't have a birth certificate. So the first time he went to get a passport, it was common of, people of his generation in my country of origin. And so the first time I went to get a passport, he said, yeah, I don't know my exact age. So they just picked a year which they thought was most likely and gave the date of January 1st. Yeah, my dad don't know his actual age. Did I hear Ryan Garcia's take on Tyson AJ? No, I didn't. You care to enlighten me? Mark Odell says, black don't crack hat, man. I'm not so sure about that these days, bro. I don't know. Sometimes, but other times it's like, whoa. I mean, that is true in a literal sense, you know. The more melanated your skin is, the less prone you are to wrinkles and whatnot. But there are other visual clues when it comes to black people as far as aging. So the skin on the face of a man gets extremely thick. You know, where you shave, the skin build up, because melanated skin is actually thicker than white skin. And as you age, your skin gets thicker and thicker and thicker where you shave, you know, because your body starts to overcompensate for the fact that you're taking off layers of skin from your face. So black men tend to get like really thick skin around the shaving area, and it starts to look much darker than the rest of your face. And that's like a tell that you're getting up there in age. Do you know what I mean? Because I've got that now. I've got like, the part where I shave is like darker than the rest of my face. I never used to have that when I was younger. My face was all the same complexion all the way through. As I've got older, the area that I shave is all like darker and that. And the skin all gets rugged and whatnot. Encircled says, if a man is at least a foot shorter than him, he won't fight them. Or I guess he meant to say, if a man isn't at least a foot shorter than him, he won't fight them. He's talking about John Fury, aka Johnny Partridge. Okay. So you think that, or Ryan Garcia thinks that AJ will beat Luke Partridge because he's confident against Partridge, and that's not the case with Partridge. All right. Rich Franklin says, Hatman, I've also noticed black men are not hairy compared to other races of men. Do you know why? Well, the least hairy race are Orientals. Orientals barely have any hair on their face or body and all that kind of stuff. But they're the least hairy as Orientals. But probably second would be black people. Yeah, we're the second least hairy behind Orientals. But we are more hairy than Orientals. But it depends on where a person is from. So Nilots, which are black people from South Sudan, northern Uganda, Kenya, you find Nilotic tribes. They are extremely tall and extremely dark and extremely hairless. Yeah, the men cannot even grow facial hair, most of them. Whereas for most Bantu people, Bantus are not Nilotic, and Bantus would include the vast majority of black Americans and Caribbeans, we can grow hair, like facial hair and body hair, to a much greater extent than Nilotic people. So it depends on where the black people are from. I don't think Khoisan, you know, the indigenous people of Southern Africa, I don't think they're very hairy either. They're like less hairy than Bantus. But yeah, compared to like white people and Asian people, black people are less hairy. Yeah. Do I know why? I got no idea. No idea why. Is it to do with the hotter climate? But if it was the hotter climate, then why are Asian people more hairy than we are? I don't know. Because Asian people, you know, Pakistan, India and whatnot, their climate is hot too. Big up Ali for the super chat. He says, promotions page, Amir Khan, it's the other way round. Instagram. Okay. Amir Khan Instagram promotions page. Everyone should check that out. Mark Odell says Nigerians are born with beards. Yeah. I'm an example of somebody who can barely grow a beard. I mean, I have a beard, a small, short beard, but my beard will never grow beyond, I don't know. And it's very patchy, my beard, even now. And it won't grow beyond maybe a centimeter. It will literally grow a centimeter and then just stop. So all them big Barry White beards that everyone's got these days, Ade Oladipo's got a pretty big beard, and all these other guys, Black American fighters with big beards, Adrian Broner. I can't grow a beard like that. My beard won't get to that. It just won't get to that. It just stops. It grows up about a centimeter and then just stops completely. It don't get any further than that. It's weird. Yeah, it is fascinating. How our bodies know when the beard is at a certain length. Then it just stops. To be honest, I don't really want a beard anyway. So it's not, the fact I can't really grow a beard or a long beard doesn't bother me because it's not really my thing anyway. I get stubble, like constantly. I have to shave every couple days at this point. As you get older, the facial hair grows more frequently and more often. So I have to shave a lot more now than I did when I was younger. But if I stop shaving completely, I'm telling you, the beard don't get any longer than a centimeter or so. That's it. It will just stay there. Pick up Ali for the super chat. He says, yeah, Adalai is fighting in Nigeria, my brother, who said on normal chat. Who's Adalai fighting on that card? Yeah, that's another thing. Whenever I have let my beard grow, I find myself itching it all the time. It just annoys me to have that much hair on my face. I'm always like pulling at it and itching it. Nah, I can't do it. Even the little patchy short beard that I can grow, I don't like it. Yeah, I agree with Encircled. I feel the same way. The facial hair is just irritating. Beyond a little goatee or something, anything beyond that just irritates me. All right, so random information for you guys. Before I started this stream, I was watching some series on Netflix. I forget the name of it now, but it's starring Brendan Gleeson, the Irish actor. The Irish actor from 28 Days Later, Harry Potter. He was also in... what else has he been in apart from 28 Days Later and Harry Potter, Brendan Gleeson? Oh, Gangs of New York. So there's some series on Netflix that he's in, which I started watching. And I was so weirded out by it. There's a particular scene in it. I was like, hell no. I had to switch it right off. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. It was mildly interesting up until that point. But at a certain point, it got so weird, no, I had to turn it off. Anyone know the series I'm talking about with Brendan Gleeson? What on earth is going on there? So basically in this series, Brendan Gleeson plays a cop in America. He's got his Irish accent, but he's a cop in America. And there's some young guy who I'm not sure might actually be Brendan Gleeson's son. Not in real life. I mean, Brendan Gleeson's character's son in the series. I think it hasn't made it clear whether that's his son or not. But there's this disturbed individual that works in like a computer shop. And somehow he's like a tech whiz where he can control things like traffic signals and the barriers for like train tracks and stuff like that remotely, obviously illegally. And he ends up causing the death of some scumbag guy who's been bullying him and his work colleagues, a customer. Causing his death by making the traffic lights go green when they should be red, and some big truck comes and wipes the guy out. And then at the end of the episode, this guy sat in his car and he starts jerking his joystick, fantasizing about plowing into a crowd full of people and killing them all. Yeah, Mr. Mercedes. There you go, Hans. Yeah, Mr. Mercedes. As soon as I saw that scene, I was like, nah, man, I'm turning this off. What in the world is this? Yeah, as you do. As you do. He's there like jerking his joystick. And there's like a crowd of people in the road ahead of him. And he's like fantasizing about, you know, plowing into him with his car and mowing them all down. Like jerking off over. Nah, man. I'm not about that life, bro. That's too weird for me. It's too weird. Shout out to Snoop Bob. He says, everyone's got a price. How much to walk around South London on a Saturday afternoon wearing a bonnet? Oh my days. Now you're really putting me on the spot. How much to walk around South London on a Saturday afternoon wearing a bonnet? Well, as long as there are no stipulations about revealing that I'm being paid to do it, then I can do that for 10 grand. Pay me 10 grand as long as I can tell people afterwards that I was being paid to wear the bonnet. To wear a bonnet for the afternoon. I can do that for 10 grand. So run me 10 racks. Shout out to Snoop Bob. Big up Ali. He's reminding everyone it's on Instagram. The information regarding the Dylan White, Lawrence Bakoli offer on the Amir Khan's promotion page. We got it, bro. Everyone can head on over there. Oh, Rich Franklin says, now you can never tell people. If I can't tell people I'm being paid to do it, then, well, we got to multiply that figure by several. Because then my reputation's at stake. Indeed, location matters on this one. I can't tell them. Run me 50 racks. Okay, apparently Mr. Mercedes is based on a Stephen King book. Okay, prolific author but strange guy. Has Stephen King had plastic surgery? Because his face doesn't look real. Stephen King's face looks like Bob Lazar with plastic surgery somehow. It's got a super weird face. His face looks like something out of one of his movies. Big up Ali, he says, listen, Hatman, when the fight is official and White does take it, what will be your reaction? I'll be somewhat surprised. Yeah, I'll be somewhat surprised. For several reasons. One, surprised that Dillian Whyte's willing to go in there and get chinned by Bakoli right off the back of being chinned by the Talma. Because Dillian Whyte hates Lawrence Bakoli, hates his guts. And two, surprised that they managed to come up with enough money to make Dillian Whyte agree to the fight. So I'll be somewhat surprised if the fight gets signed. So yeah, we'll see. Because I expect Lawrence Bakoli to knock Dillian Whyte the hell out inside 4 rounds. Probably well inside 4. That's what I'm expecting. And, Dillian Whyte to me looks like a haunted man after that Atalma fight. In all the interviews, the spark and the life from his eyes had gone when he was interviewed after the Atalma fight. You could see it affected him probably more than any of his other defeats have affected him. Because he never managed to do anything. In all his previous defeats, he at least managed to last a few rounds and do something. But against the Talma, he just got totally wiped out. So, yeah, I'll be surprised, but I will expect Bakoli to wipe him out. I think Bakoli will wipe him out. Ali says Amir Khan will persuade him. We shall see. We shall see. I think it'll be a very sad end for Dillian Whyte if that fight goes ahead and it happens. A very sad end. Yeah, that's right, Rich Franklin. The eyes are the windows to the soul. Like Tony Montana said in Scarface, the eyes, Chico, they never lie. Ali says, I remember I screamed when Povetkin landed the uppercut from hell. That definitely messed him up neurologically. I screamed as well. It was so unexpected. And I predicted, in my pre-fight prediction for Dillian Whyte versus Povetkin, I said something dramatic is going to happen to Dillian Whyte in this fight. I think he's going to hit the deck, maybe several times. That's what I said in my prediction. Without necessarily predicting Dillian Whyte would lose, but I just felt that something dramatic was going to happen to Dillian Whyte in that fight. But as the fight unfolded, I was talking to my girlfriend at the time. She was watching the fight with me, and I was like, wow, I was so wrong about this fight. I thought Povetkin would be a problem for Dillian Whyte. I thought Dillian Whyte might even hit the deck. I got this one terribly wrong. Because Dillian Whyte was just winning so easily. And then round 5 came, and that uppercut came out of nowhere. And me and my girlfriend at the time, my ex, both like screamed, whoa! Whoa! Where the hell did that come from? It's like one punch and it was all over. Yeah, that was crazy. Big up Ali for the super chat. He says, it's the grudge match I want to see. The beef over the years. You know, I would have wanted to see it when Dillian Whyte still had something left. At this stage, I feel like it's a mismatch. You know? At this stage, it's just, in my view, maybe I'll turn out to be wrong, but in my view, it's just Lawrence Bakoli turning up to spark out Dillian Whyte in a couple of rounds. You know, that's not, doesn't have the same significance to it as it would have done a few years ago when Dillian Whyte still had something in the tank, you know? At this stage, I feel like he's just so finished that it'll be a mismatch. Yeah, that's right, encircled. When Whyte gets chinned, he really gets chinned. And funny enough, I saw some footage from Dillian Whyte's kickboxing career where he got knocked out with an uppercut in very similar fashion. This guy's been getting knocked out by uppercuts for years. Even when he was a young man in kickboxing, he was getting iced by uppercuts. Big up Ali, he says, it'll be good to see Lawrence shine in his own hometown, his own city. With Dillian Whyte being the sacrificial lamb. Yeah, I think Lawrence Bakoli is going to be dangerous for a lot of people at heavyweight. I know he's still got this bad reputation as a hugger and boring and all this type of stuff, which is fair criticism to a point. But ever since he moved up to bridgerweight and then heavyweight, I don't think he's been horrible to watch. He had 2 first-round knockouts, one at bridgerweight, one at heavyweight. Then he beat Kevin Lara when he had a torn bicep. And he didn't clinch excessively. There was some clinching in the fight, but given the fact he had a torn bicep, I thought it was a pretty good performance. Because Kevin Lara gave Justice Hooney all he could handle. And obviously dropped Daniel Dubois several times. Bakoli handled him with ease, didn't stop him, but handled him with ease over 10 rounds or whatever it was. So I think Lawrence Bakoli is going to be a problem for people at heavyweight who give him space. I think where Bakoli is going to have issues is with fighters who are tough, you know, they've got a good chin and they can close him down. Big, physically strong heavyweights who can take a shot and can close him down and maul him on the inside. That's where I think Bakoli's going to have problems. But against guys who box at range, I think Bakoli's going to be very dangerous at heavyweight. Big up Ali, he says, Oscar Rivas is a bridgerweight that dropped Whyte heavily with an uppercut. Did he drop him with an uppercut? I forget now. I remember he dropped him, but I can't remember with which punch. But Dillian Whyte wasn't particularly hurt from that knockdown, I seem to remember. It was more of like a flash knockdown where he got up and he was like perfectly lucid and okay. Yeah, I agree. I think Bakoli carries serious power at heavyweight in that right hand. Very serious power. Kylie says, I'm still getting used to Bakoli's dimensions at heavyweight. Looks like someone has taken a foot pump to him. Yeah, he looks like... Bakoli's always had kind of a weird build. He's rectangular, isn't he? Lawrence Bakoli, he's like this rectangular physique. Like a cupboard. I've always described Bakoli's shape, he's built like a cupboard. Because you see a guy like Riakporhe, he's like that classical build where he's like a wedge shape, you know, like small waist and wide shoulders. He's like that classical shape of like a Greek carving or something, right? Whereas Bakoli doesn't have that. Bakoli's got a wider hips, and he's just built like a cupboard. He's a rectangle, yeah, V-shaped. Bakoli, on the other hand, is not V-shaped. He's like rectangular. It just looks weird. Ali says, come on, Hatman, it was a right uppercut. Watch the 9th round again of the fight. Bro, it's a long time ago. I ain't seen that fight for years. I'm not doubting you. I'm just saying I can't remember. I can't remember what shot it was. It was how many years ago? When Dillian Whyte fought Oscar Rivas? What was that, like 2018 or something? Bro, that's years ago, bro. 6 years. So 2019 then. A long time. I can't remember what shot. I remember him getting dropped. And I remember he didn't look particularly hurt, but I do not remember what punch it was. Oh yeah, you know, I wanted to make a video about that actually. About why Bakoli has come out and said that he's willing to help Jake Paul beat Anthony Joshua. What's that all about? Like, he used to be managed by Anthony Joshua. Now, he's saying he wants to help Jake Paul beat AJ. So, I don't know what that beef is, but strange, right? Shout out to Ali. He says the 30th of July 2019. All right. That's when Dillian Whyte fought Oscar Rivas. I remember the failed or adverse finding controversy before that fight. Wardley was on the undercard for that, right? Fabio Wardley fought somebody on the Whyte Rivas undercard. Pretty sure he did. I think Riakporhe might have been on that undercard as well. That was when Riakporhe was still managed by Dillian Whyte. Okay, interesting. Ocean Blue says maybe it's an extension of his beef with Hearn. Interesting take. Could be. Ali says, what do you think happened to Eddie Hearn? Guy used to be likable, now comes across like a plonker. I think desperation. He could come across like a nice guy before because he was on top of the world. But there's been a changing of the guard. Eddie Hearn's fortunes have gone a bit downhill. Frank Warren has been in the ascendancy. So I think that has brought some of the nasty side out of Eddie Hearn. He's no longer the top dog. Yeah, Mr. Apples and Pears, Apples and Pears. I'll always love that press conference where David A said that. He stuck it on Eddie Hearn. Talking about apples and pears, apples and pears. Yo. Shout out to Ali. He says, if you watch it again, it was a right uppercut that dropped him. Yes, Richard fought Chris Billum-Smith. Oh, wow. It was the first Chris Billum-Smith fight with Riakporhe in the undercard. You got a good memory, bro. remember Riakporhe fought, but I couldn't remember who it was. Okay, it was Chris Billam-Smith, the first Billam-Smith fight on the undercard. Yeah, 6 years ago. Shout out to Ali for the super chat. Jaden says, I miss David Haye. Yeah, I miss his antics. His banter, his trash talk was all very funny. And Circle says, his interview on Sky Sports with that woman about Chisora was the best. Yeah, Haye was completely non-PC. He refused to toe the line and be all politically correct, and I rate him for that. Because that was right at the start of all the woke stuff coming in, and Haye weren't having none of it. You know, when they tried to shame him and make him retract the comment he made about Audley Harrison, beating him would be as one-sided as a gang, you know what? And Haye was like, nah, I ain't retracting nothing. Man stood 10 toes down on that comment. Big up Ali, he says, and he won by split decision. Yeah, remember it was a close fight. Riakporhe was doing a lot of holding in that fight, or at least falling in. It got very scrappy towards the end of that fight. I remember that. It got very, very scrappy. Has Chris Billam-Smith ever been down in a fight? Does anyone know? Because that guy is ridiculously tough. Has he ever been knocked down in a fight? Was he down in that first Riakporhe fight? I think he got shaken a few times, but I can't remember if he ever went down. And Circle says, I'll always respect Haye for laying out Don Charles. Well, didn't actually lay out Don Charles, but did break his jaw, which was funny. Ali says he manhandled him in the first fight. Riakporhe and Billam-Smith. Yeah, I picked Riakporhe to win the rematch with Billam-Smith, but he was very disappointing, wasn't he? Very, very disappointing in that rematch. Ocean Blue says he got a standing count against Riakporhe, I think. Oh, for real? Collie knocked Billam-Smith down in the first round, did he? Ali says the ropes kept him up. But did he receive a count? Yeah, Collie went down in the Billam-Smith fight. Bakoli went down several times, I think. But I don't recall Billam-Smith going down against the Collie. I'm not saying he didn't, I'm saying I can't recall it. Hussein says, Hatman, who's got a stronger chin, Dave Allen or Hrgovic? Both got fantastic chins. Both guys' chins have been thoroughly tested by big punchers. I'm not sure, you know. Both guys are way up. They might be the number 1 and 2 in either order as far as best chins in the heavyweight division. Dave Allen and Hrgovic. They're probably the top 2 chins in boxing right now. Yeah, Parker's got a decent chin, but it's not like Hrgovic or Dave Allen's chin. They've got better chins than Parker. Big up Ali, he said, Yes, he did, but he made an argument about that leading up to rematch, the count which he got on the ropes, keeping him up. Okay, so Billum Smith got a count, but he didn't like the count and made an argument about it. So he's had a count before then, but he's never actually touched the canvas. But Billum Smith definitely tough as nails. Evil Uncle Phil says, was there a worse champion in the Cruiserweight division than CBS? Probably. There's been some pretty ropey champions over the years at Cruiserweight. Especially in the early years of that division, there were some pretty ropey champions. That's right, Sam Donahue. The World War II soldier, or even World War I soldier. Chris Billum Smith's face and his build and even his haircut literally looks like a World War I soldier from the trenches. His cheekbones, everything about his face. This looks like a guy from a black and white photo in World War I. It's the weirdest thing. You know what I mean? I'm telling you, Evil Uncle Phil, Chris Billum Smith should go into acting and be willingly typecast in period movies about World War I and II. He could make money doing that for sure. Big up Lakvinder Singh. He says, who wins, Ruiz versus Wilder? Right now, I'd probably lean towards Ruiz. I suspect he's a bit fresher. You know what? He does actually, Jelly Mode. CBS does look a little bit like John Cena, yeah. An emaciated John Cena. A John Cena who's come out of a concentration camp after a year. Yeah, maybe. He does look a little like him. PMC says Billum Smith is the new James Bond. Nah, Billum Smith looks too... He doesn't look suave enough, you know? Like I say, he looks like a soldier from the trenches. He doesn't look like a womanizing secret agent. To me, anyway. He looks like he's been through loads of physical trauma and stress. You don't have that suave look. Rich Franklin says CBS's RoboCop. User says Caballero versus Dubois would be a good fight. I think one of the most explosive fights that can be made in the heavyweight division right now would be Wardley versus Dubois. Caballero versus Dubois is a good fight as well, for sure. I'd pick Caballero to win. But Wardley versus Dubois. That fight would almost be too savage to be legal. You know what I mean? Like, Wardley versus Dubois is pure savagery. That's not going the distance. That's pure savagery. Big up Ali for the super chat. He says, I like the intensity of the way Joe Gallagher puts his fighters through training camp, especially Lawrence, who he will never hear a bad word about. Well, that's the thing about Joe Gallagher, is he is so protective. I don't mean in terms of not putting these guys in tough fights. I mean, in the boxing business, from a business perspective, from a manager perspective, Joe Gallagher is so protective of his fighters. He won't hear a bad word said about them. He'll fight tooth and nail to get them the best deal. That's why Eddie Hearn doesn't really like Joe Gallagher, because Joe Gallagher won't allow Eddie Hearn or Frank Warren or anyone to shortchange his fighters. Joe Gallagher is extra fierce for his fighters in that boardroom, you know what I mean, when he's negotiating deals. Sometimes I feel like Joe Gallagher might be too fierce when he's negotiating with promoters on behalf of his fighters, because he can rub the promoters up the wrong way to the point where they just walk away. Yeah, I remember there was a point where Eddie Hearn wouldn't put any Joe Gallagher fighters on his shows for a while because he was so upset with Joe Gallagher. But yeah, Gallagher really fights his fighter's corner. You know, he really does that. And it's definitely the case with Lawrence Bakoli. He will not hear any bad words said about Lawrence Bakoli whatsoever. And indeed, he does push his fighters in the gym. I remember Bakoli after that fight he had at Bridgerweight. Was it that one or the heavyweight fight? First heavyweight fight, where he said that he hated Joe Gallagher during training camp because of how hard he was being pushed. But it paid dividends, you know? That's why he thanked Joe after the fight for pushing him like that. But he said during camp he hated him. We got Ali for the super chat. Yeah, Splinter, there you go. Splinter from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, not messing around. I remember back in the days, I can't remember what it was over, but Barry McGuigan and Joe Gallagher had some kind of beef. Do you guys remember that? What that was all about? When McGuigan and Gallagher had beef? And McGuigan was like trying to make Gallagher feel insecure, calling him a fake Irishman. Obviously, Gallagher's an Irish name. So Joe Gallagher's obviously got Irish heritage. But Barry McGuigan was basically taking his Irish card away from him, or attempting to, saying Joe Gallagher can't look a man in the eye when he talks to them. And I don't know, I can't remember all the stuff Barry McGuigan was saying, but he was going in on Joe Gallagher. I make him feel like a fake Irishman. Easy, Barry. Yeah, it could have been. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it could have been the Scott Quigg Carl Frampton fight. That's when that little beef between them might have popped up. That's right. The Quigg Frampton thing. When the McGuigans were still representing Frampton. Big up Ali, he says, if I was to do boxing, Joe Gallagher would be a trainer who I would have in mind to train me. Even Uncle Phil says, Joe Gallagher looks like John Abruzzi off Prison Break. He actually does. He low-key does look like that. That John Abruzzi is played by a Swedish actor. And he is so weird. He's got such a weird demeanor, that guy. Gallagher doesn't have the weird demeanor of the John Abruzzi character, but yeah, he looks somewhat like him. But whatever that actor's name is, that Swedish actor that played John Abruzzi, he's weird as hell, bro. He was in the Until Dawn video game and also the movie. He talks weird, he looks weird. Maybe there's a weird Swedish thing going on, because then you've got that guy who played Pennywise. He's also really creepy. You know the Swedish guy that played Pennywise? And he also was in the movie Barbarian. That's a good movie, by the way, Barbarian. Even though it's got, you know, it's basically feminist propaganda movie on one level. But as a piece of entertainment, it's quite good. I think his name is Skarsgård. Something Skarsgård, the guy that played Pennywise. Evil Uncle Phil says Peter. Is it Stamare? Is that the guy that played... Is that the Joe Gallagher lookalike from Until Dawn? Bill Skarsgård, thank you. Yeah, Bill Skarsgård just looks creepy and everything, even when he's not trying to be creepy. Big up Ali for the super chat. He says, because of the way of intensity he puts his fighters through training camp, he will kill you through training camps. Yeah, and some fighters really need that. They need a drill sergeant type trainer. Without it, they're not going to get the best out of themselves. But you know, there's no one size fits all trainer. Even the best trainers of all time are not going to be the right trainer for everybody. It's about, you know, finding the right guy for a particular fighter. But yeah, I like the work that Joe Gallagher's been doing with Lawrence Okolie, I can tell you that. Evil Uncle Phil says Hearn's still trying to downplay the weight draining that he caused in October Red's interview. Ali says, Hatman, can I tell you something that you will love to hear? Go ahead. By all means. Tell me something that I'd love to hear. User says, do you think ex-boxers make better trainers than non-ex-boxers? Generally, yes. But teaching is very different than doing. Teaching is a whole skill and a whole art form by itself, you know? You have many, many great fighters who tried their hand at training, but were never any good at it. I think one of the mistakes that great fighters make is to assume that the guys they train can do the things that they did. I mean, a good example of a great fighter who so far has made a terrible trainer would be Lennox Lewis. Lennox Lewis has got the opposite of the Midas touch as a trainer. Anything he touches turns to doo-doo. Terrible. When Lennox Lewis trains you, even if he turns up at your gym, you might as well pull out the fight. He's jinxed you. It's like the Drake jinx. Although when he turned up to Usyk's gym, it didn't hurt him, but Usyk is protected. He's got a golden glow around him. But everyone else, if Lennox Lewis turns up to your gym and wants to do a bit of training with you, the writing's on the wall. Jupiter String says, Lennox has weird energy. Vengeance says, imagine David Haye as a trainer. I've made over 1 million betting on his predictions the other way. Yeah, easy work. That's crazy. There you go. Striker says Lewis turned up to give Frazer Clarke advice and Clarke ends up with a hole in his head. And I saw someone say that Clarke actually took Lewis's advice because Lewis was telling him to like wave his left hand around when they were doing pads. Because that's something Lennox Lewis used to do. Wave his left hand around like a wand. And Frazer Clarke came out and did that in the first round against Wardley and then got clocked with a right hand over that left. So it's like he took Lewis's advice and got punished for it immediately. And that would be an example of Lewis teaching a fighter something which he was able to get away with because of his reflexes. Not understanding that a much slower fighter like Frazer Clarke is not going to be able to get away with. PMC says, do you think Partridge would be a good trainer, or would he just teach people to retire and avoid fighting anyone with a pulse? You guys got jokes, huh? No usernames left says, who has made more wrong predictions, David Haye or Johnny Nelson? Who would have made tremendous money betting against them two? I think Haye has made more wrong predictions. I mean, Haye's predictions are so bad that it's actually spectacular. You know, it takes some doing, because think about it. Statistically, if you didn't know anything about boxing and you just randomly picked the winner of a fight, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, you're going to get 50% of them right. Yeah? Any person who doesn't know anything about boxing, if they just did eeny, meeny, miny, mo, they're likely to get 50% of the predictions right. I'm saying David Haye's prediction record is well under 50%. So it's actually remarkable from Haye's prediction record is remarkable from a statistical perspective. That he's got that many wrong. Well, at some point, when Haye kept picking against Partridge, I was starting to think he was just trolling. Do you know what I mean? He was just saying it because he knew it would upset John Fury. Indeed, yeah. Hay did pick Usyk to win the Partridge rematch, and he got that one right. I weren't worried though, because Usyk has always had this golden glow around him. He's just a blessed individual. Do you know what I mean? There's just something special about Usyk. He's got a golden glow around him. I mean, how many fighters have managed to travel to other guys' backyards when oftentimes those guys are cash cows and they're favored by the boxing industry, and he comes away with victories? There's something different about him, you know, beyond the realm of boxing maybe, where he's just ordained and chosen to be a special individual and a successful individual somehow. NJ says, I remember when he picked Wilder when they done the interview by the ring, and John was there and John was fuming. He turned to look at Hay with his flat head. Evil Uncle Phil says, I definitely think Usyk is beatable and he knows it. Well, in my opinion, everyone's beatable. I don't think there's ever been an invincible fighter. Vengeance says, Duke McKenzie is a good predictor. Only one I've seen him get wrong lately was Adelie versus Hrgovic. And to be fair, with Adelie versus Hrgovic, he said he thought Adelie would maybe come from behind. This is what he predicted, that Adelie would come from behind and stop Hrgovic late. So even though he got the result wrong, he weren't too far off in terms of the way the fight was going to play out. Because that's the most I've ever seen Filip Hrgovic in that 8th round against Adelie. The most hurt I've ever seen him. Yeah, Usyk's just got that golden glow around him. It's a golden glow. Okay, Graham says, do you think Ben Whittaker can beat any of the other Brits at light heavyweight? Right now, I'd pick him over Dan Aziz. I'm tempted to pick him over Buatsi right now. Because Buatsi looked terrible in his last fight. Terrible! In his last fight. He looked shocking. Zach Parker is no great shakes, folks. Based on that, I'm tempted to pick Whittaker over Buatsi. And I wouldn't have said that a year ago, 18 months ago, but right now I'm tempted to pick Whittaker over Buatsi because Buatsi just looks so poor at the moment. I'm not sure about Yard. We'll see how Yard comes back from the Benavidez fight, but Yard, when he's on form, I think might have the beating of Ben Whittaker right now. When he's on form. Yeah, I wouldn't pick Whittaker over Callum Smith. I'd take Callum Smith in that fight. No, I don't think Dillian Whyte ever called Tyson Fury Luke Partridge, but he did call him Luke. He said that because Dillian Whyte used to train with Luke Partridge earlier on in his career, you know, long before he won the heavyweight title. And he said that when he went up to training camp, when Peter Fury was still training Luke then, he said that all of Luke's family and friends were calling him Luke. They weren't calling him Tyson. All right, peeps, I'm going to wrap this one up. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining this conversation. It's been a blast as usual. Special shout out to those who donated via Super Chat. They were supersized fries. Adam Folks, GMS Nightmare, Funny Faces, D-Man, Baz Newton, Ali, of course. Snoop Bob. Another shout out to Ali. And as I say, everyone else who joined the conversation. Until next time, take care, be good. I'll catch you guys on the other side. I'm out.